Hi, welcome back to this Free-for-All Friday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. I forgot to mention the first hour talking about this 44-cent cure we're doing with World Concern. 166,000 children are going to be cared for and cured by what has already been done through this listening audience so far this month. Our goal is to get to 300,000. We want 300,000 children in the third world to be cared for and cured with this 44-cent cure. That's all it takes to clear a child's body of these parasites that rob them of nutrition, rob them of vitamin A, can turn them blind, malnourished, diseased, and even dead. So again, that number 700 or 800-700-8084, 800-700-8084. Have your credit card handy or go to afr.net. 888-589-8840, number to call. I want to play an excerpt of kind of an impromptu speech by Representative Mike Kelly. This was during the hearings this morning with that incompetent boob. I don't know what other term to use. He was hopelessly incompetent. I mean, he was either lying through his teeth or he was utterly inept because he didn't know anything, didn't have any names, even though he's the guy that's in charge there. And his former boss now is going to run the whole IRS enforcement deal for Obamacare. That ought to be a great comfort to the American people. I mean, it's just a staggering level of malevolence and maliciousness here. We're way past the time where we can pretend this is just accidental. This is obviously quite intentional. But this is Representative Mike Kelly from, I think, the Pittsburgh area. He's from Pennsylvania anyway. And he went off kind of on an impromptu speech here, got a standing ovation from the gallery. The guy running, who was acting speaker, had to gavel everybody to order because he just lit the place up. So we're just going to grab a couple of minutes of it so you can get a flavor of it. Let's listen.
The American people. Now, I know that where you're at, you're resigning. You're walking away from it. But this is not going to go away. This is a Pandora's box that has been opened, and I don't think we get the lid back on it. And I don't believe that the White House just found out about this in a news report. The president happened to grab a TV shot or just read Mr. George's report and said, you know what, anybody heard about this before? I'm just getting the first look at this. Shouldn't somebody be responsible? And I'm thinking maybe the executive office, maybe Treasury falls in there. I'm not sure that we understand how that organizational chart works. But I am really concerned. Now, I got to tell you, where you're sitting, you should be outraged. But you're not. The American people should be outraged, and they are. And this committee, this has nothing to do with political parties. This has to do with highly targeted groups. This reconfirms everything that the American public believes. This is a huge blow to the faith and trust the American people have in their government. Is there any limit to the scope of where you folks can go? Is there anything at all? Is there any way that we could ask you, is there any question that you shouldn't have asked? My goodness, how much money do you have in your wallet? Who do you get emails from? Whose sign do you put up in your front yard? This is a tax question? And you don't think that's intimidating? It's sure as hell intimidating. And I don't know that I got any answers from you today. And I don't know that what Mr. George has done is great work. But you know what? There's a heck of a lot more that has to come out in this. And anybody to sit here today and listen to what you have to say, I am more concerned today than I was before. And the fact that you all can do just about anything you want to anybody, you know, you can put anybody out of business that you want anytime you want. And I got to tell you, you talked about you're a horribly run organization. If you're on the other side of the fence, you're not given that excuse. And when the IRS comes in, you're not allowed to be shoddy. You're not allowed to be run horribly. You're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to do one damn thing that doesn't come in compliance. If you do, you're held responsible right then. I just think the American people have seen what's going on right now in their government. This is absolutely an overreach, and this is an outrage for all America.
This is Representative Kelly from Pennsylvania area, and he was just wound up, and he lit that place up. Standing ovation had to be gavelled down. And you think for a minute about the fact that this woman at the IRS who was responsible for harassing Billy Graham, James Dobson, the Coalition for Life in Iowa, the National Organization for Marriage, Tea Party groups all over the fruited plain. One Tea Party group, not even a Tea Party group, they just educate young people on the Constitution, And the IRS said, we want a list of the name of every student that you ever instructed or ever might instruct. Give us their names. We want the names of the high school students that you're going to instruct. We want them all. I mean, utterly intrusive. And now she's over at the IRS branch that's going to enforce Obamacare. And right now, the IRS is already in court. They're facing a class action lawsuit because they stole 60 million medical records from 10 million Americans. This is according to a report by Courthouse News, an unnamed HIPAA-covered entity that has to do with the Privacy Act in California is suing the IRS, alleging that some 60 million medical records from 10 million patients were stolen by 15 IRS agents. The personal health information seized on March 11, 2011 included psychological counseling, gynecological counseling, sexual drug treatment, and other medical treatment data, and it had absolutely nothing to do with any tax issue. So realize that already, before the IRS is even in charge of Obamacare, they have already stolen 60 million medical records with intensely personal medical information on it. Gynecological counseling, psychological counseling, sexual and drug treatment. And the IRS has these records, 60 million of them. So the privacy of 10 million Americans already been hopelessly compromised by the IRS, and we are about ready to let them run the enforcement of the entire Obamacare machinery. If that doesn't send a chill up, and we've got a woman in charge who's already proven that she's perfectly willing to use the power and authority of the IRS for nakedly political reasons. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Rich in Sioux City, Iowa. Rich, thanks for calling and thanks for waiting. What's on your mind?
Thanks, Brian. I got some strong words here, and I wouldn't say them if I didn't believe them. I was born again in the spring of '82, and I was broken to the point of surrendering, and at which point I became teachable. And one of the first things he taught me was to be careful what you read and watch and listen to. And I've held to that. Now, lately I've gotten the tug to read Bonhoeffer by Eric Metaxas.
Yes.
And I drug my feet. It's 450 pages, and eventually I started reading it. At about page 120, it gets very interesting. The parallels between Hitler and Obama are striking. The way things were done, the deception, the way he played his cards. And it's like reading, if today's newspaper was telling the truth, it's like reading today's paper. And, you know, I'll back this up with Obama was trained in the Saul Alinsky model. He didn't know him in person, but was trained in that. Saul Alinsky dedicated his works to Lucifer. He said Lucifer, at least he got his own kingdom. And at the top of Alinsky's list of heroes was Adolf Hitler. Mm-hmm. So the dots are being connected for me, Brian. God bless you guys, and I'll listen on the radio.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the call, Rich. You know, and you want another parallel. I've talked about this kind of strange mutual admiration society between the political left in America and Islam. That's a linkage and mutual admiration society that doesn't make any sense. But then you realize that they are colleagues, they're allies, because they have the same enemy. And that enemy is us. That enemy is Christians. That enemy is people who support and believe in the Judeo-Christian tradition. That enemy is people who believe in the founding principles of the Judeo-Christian tradition. We are their enemies. The secular fundamentalists, like Barack Obama, hate us. They despise us. The IRS hates us. They despise us because we represent the founding principles of this country, the Judeo-Christian tradition. We believe in the fundamental truths, claims of the Bible and Christianity. So they hate us. They despise us. They want to neutralize us. That's exactly what Islam wants to do. Islam despises. We are apes and pigs and infidels in the eyes of Islam. I'm not saying in the eyes of every Muslim, but in the eyes of their ideology, whether they believe it, accept it, embrace it or not. This is what their religion teaches. This is what their religion believes. This is what their holy book teaches, that we are apes and pigs and infidels. and deserve to be removed from the face of the earth. So they have this common enemy, and we had another illustration of it just this week. This was, I believe, in Saudi Arabia. I couldn't find the story. It's in my stack somewhere. But it was two people who have been sent to prison. This was in a Muslim country. I believe it was Saudi Arabia. Yeah, here it is. I found the story near the bottom of the stack. But listen to this. And remember, to set the stage for this little story, remember that the Pentagon has come out and said you can evangelize, but you cannot proselytize. Well, you look those words up in the dictionary, they're the same thing. They mean exactly the same thing. To proselytize is to make an effort to persuade someone to adopt your religious faith. That's persuasion. It's not coercion. It's persuasion. Look it up in the dictionary. That's what it means. And the Pentagon has said, you do that in the military, we're going to court-martial you. We are going to send you to the brig. We're going to incarcerate you if you try to share your faith with anybody, and will dishonorably discharge you from the military. Now think about that when you read this story about Saudi Arabia. A Saudi court jailed a Lebanese man for 6 years and sentenced him to 300 lashes after convicting him, listen to this, of encouraging a Saudi woman to convert to Christianity. And this is reported in the Saudi Arabian press. So what did this guy do? He encouraged this Saudi woman to convert to Christianity. That's proselytizing. What happened to him? He's in jail for 6 years. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what your commander-in-chief wanted to do to your Christian friends who are serving right now in the United States military. Our president wants to do the same thing to them that a Muslim country is doing to Christians in its land who encourage, not coerce, not pressure, but simply encourage and persuade to become followers of Jesus Christ. So if you can't tell the difference between our president and what he wants to do in Saudi Arabia, you got a lot of company. Back in 2.